Serious considerations upgrading from a Nord Stage 3 to a Nord Stage 4. I've boiled this down to two large, significant considerations. This first one is sort of the elephant in the room. No one is really talking about it, and perhaps no one is talking about it because it's so obvious. But I think if you're new to the world of Nord keyboards, or if you've only ever owned a Nord Stage 3, this first consideration may not even be something you realize. And I know that because people have come to me and say, how does this work? And it doesn't. So that first consideration is the fact that yes, you have to manually recreate every single one of your programs on the Nord Stage 4. So whatever work and toil that you've had on the Stage 3, essentially you have to recreate that from scratch with really no choice in the matter. It's a manual process. Now, there are two camps. There's the camp of, I bought a Stage 3, I never learned really how it works to any significant degree. I play lightweight music, lightweight meaning I don't have to go through a lot of effort and work to mimic a cover song. I'm not in a cover band, and perhaps I'm a jazz musician, or perhaps I'm playing the blues, and really I have my 6 or 7 staple sounds. I need a good Rhodes sound, a good piano sound, or two. I need a basic synth lead, some synth pads, and I'm good to go. So if you're in that camp and you've never really bothered to learn the Nord Stage 3, as far as from a sound programming standpoint, you've learned how to put things together maybe, you've learned how to take a preset, maybe even do a tweak to it, but you never really got into the whole artwork, the art form of recreating a sound from scratch or trying to mimic something that's already out there, let's say from a famous song because you're in a cover band. Or even worse, if you're in a tribute band where the stakes are even higher to get that sound as close to real as possible. So if you're in that camp, then this isn't going to affect you as much. You're going to have to spend some time with the Nord Stage 4. You're going to have to, in a sense, learn how it works and recreate your set list or your favorite song patches. But your work won't be any worse than it was on the Stage 3, and perhaps you went into this knowing that and you're good to go. Then there's the people in the other camp. Those people that have literally taken years to set up their keyboard to a degree that goes far beyond what a lot of musicians end up doing. And those are the people that are in the tribute bands, those are the people that are in cover bands, or those are the people that are in a really sophisticated arrangement type situation where, okay, I push a button and it sets the extern control for these 4 keyboards and it switches to the organ on this song part, and then it goes here and it goes there and it does all that. So unfortunately, you're in the same boat. You're going to have to recreate that from scratch. There is no magic button. There is no program we can load that says convert all my Nord Stage 3 sounds and programs to the Nord Stage 4. Nothing like that really ever existed in the world of Nord. Whether you're coming from an Electro 5 and moving to an Electro 6, it's start over. Moving from a Stage 2 to a Stage 3, it's start over. Now, in many ways, I feel like I'm delivering bad news. In many ways, I feel like I used to work at a restaurant called T-Bones. And I did that for 4 years. And one night, we ran out of T-Bones. And I had to deliver that message to table after table saying, I know we're called T-Bones. Yes, we ran out of T-Bones. I can't believe it myself. This is one of those situations. I can't believe there's no migration path. But on the other hand, I also appreciate the fact that the architecture of these two keyboards is really like night and day. And in order to progress forward, you have to make some sacrifices. So there is, in many ways, no direct conversion on a lot of this stuff. Now, one argument can say, well, the pianos come from their own piano library. So don't tell me about the fact that we can't do some sort of conversion. If you know you're using a white grand, you can make a program that uses a white grand. Okay, that's a good argument. And what about the built-in Nord samples? Could we convert those? Technically, we could. They came from Nord. Why can't they convert them? But things like the effects are a little different. And certainly, a big one is the fact that the synth engine is based on a different architecture. It's based on the foundations of a Nord Wave 2, whereas the Stage 3 are based on the foundations of a Lead A1. All these keyboards are from Nord, but sometimes there is no direct correlation between what you're hearing in the synth here compared to what you're hearing in the synth here between the stage 3 and the stage 4. And of course, that's where we really start getting anxious, because who's going to do all that work? Guess who? You're going to do that work. Although I do have an idea for some business opportunities for those in the community who might be able to use their stage 3, grab the programs that you might have saved on your stage 3, give it to that said person, and that person has a stage 4 as well, and they go ahead and do all the programming for it, and then they send you back the completed program on the stage 4. How cool would that be? So we'll talk about that here towards the end of the video. So we have the recreation of the programs. That's the big one. And how do we get around that, or what are the situations? So yes, we have to manually create every program one by one on the stage 4. And this is going to hurt your feelings, and it's hurting my feelings, but there may be hope. Old samples don't convert. What does that mean? It means if you're using a sample from the Nord Stage 3, there's no direct way to use or get that sample on your Nord Stage 4. It simply doesn't get there. There is no conversion. Now, I believe that the people at Nord probably heard this loud and clear and are probably working on a solution so that you can simply take an old sample format, drag it over to the Nord Sound Manager, and have it just magically convert. They have done this in the past, so they can do it again, I would assume. So I would imagine we just have to wait for it. It probably will come in the form of an update to the Nord Sound Manager. Most likely the Nord Sound Manager would update. You take your old samples, drag it in there, and voila, you'll be able to move your old samples, the custom samples especially, to your Nord Stage 4. So that could be a temporary problem, but it is a huge problem today. And then the third situation is, well, the synths are different. So if you did any kind of tweaking or modifications on your stage 3, well, you're going to have to do that and learn the synth on the stage 4. So here are my workarounds for each of these problems. So manually creating your sounds. What do you do? How do you get around that? One good solution is to start using the Nord File Viewer. This is an application made by members in the community. And it's really a fantastic piece of software. It runs either in a browser. It actually runs on Windows and Mac. It might even run on Linux. But what you do is you take your Nord Stage 3 sound, your program, whether it be a bundle or the actual program itself, and you drag it over to the Nord File Viewer, or you load it clicking the button. And once it's loaded, it exposes all the details of that sound for you in black and white so that you can see it, you can print it, you can save it as a PDF even. All of that makes your life easier when it comes to figuring out what was it on my stage 3 and how do I get that on my stage 4. Now, they made this file viewer for the purposes of people upgrading a Nord Stage 2 to a Nord Stage 3 because they had the same woes. So this sort of solved that problem, and this will solve that problem again for the Nord Stage 4. Why? Because the Nord File Viewer is compatible with the Nord Stage 3. So if you've tossed your keyboard or traded it in order to get the Nord Stage 4, basically you've thrown out the recipe book. Let's hope that you've saved your old Stage 3 programs so that you can adopt that and drag them over to the Nord File Viewer. For those of you who are using purchased libraries from the community, whether it be a paid or free, something free from the Nord User Forum, those packages formatted for the Stage 3 can also be used on the Nord File Viewer, where you can expose the parameters and the settings and at least give you a fighting chance to recreate that with some help on your Nord Stage 4. So that's the Nord File Viewer. That is sort of a diamond in the rough when it comes to this. It's still manual process. It's still going to take work, toil, and gnashing of teeth. But the Nord File Viewer will make it that much easier. Old samples not converting. I already mentioned that as of this recording, there is no solution for that, no easy solution where you can just drag something and have it convert. But people have done this workaround, and it's not pretty. Again, don't shoot the messenger. This is another situation where we ran out of T-bones. Record samples from your Stage 3. So if you're still lucky enough to have your Stage 3, record your samples. What you want to do is you want to take off all the effects and just keep the raw tone of that sample. You want to record it into your computer and then use the Nord Sample Editor to reassign it to the given key or the given setup that you had originally, if you even know what that is. And then you can absolutely export that to your Nord Stage 4. So in a sense, you call that a manual conversion. And by manual, I mean it's really manual. You actually have to re-record the sample. And if you've never done your own samples before because you've bought your samples from, let's say, a third-party library, and you were lucky enough to get those samples and you've just installed it and never looked back, but yet that library, that same library you purchased, hasn't yet been converted to the Nord Stage 4 because either they haven't gotten around to it or the people that created it have moved on to something else, then you're stuck. You've got the original sample, you've got the original sound pack. If you're lucky enough to have your Stage 3, then you can record from the Stage 3 into the computer and literally recreate your samples from scratch. But that's going to take more learning. You're going to now learn the Nord sample editor. Luckily, I have a solution for that. There is a free course that I make available at mykeystomusic.com where I teach you how to work with the Nord sample editor. I show you how to record sounds from a keyboard, put them into your computer. Then from there, we assign it to a key in the Nord sample editor, and then finally get that sample out to your keyboard. Sampling is sort of an art form. You know, sometimes the samples loop, sometimes they're a single trigger. Sometimes you work with layers, sometimes you work with pitched and unpitched samples. So this really is a whole different discipline and a whole set of skills. And if you've never gone there, this might be your excuse to finally go there, not because you necessarily want to, but because you absolutely have to. You need those samples and you need to move forward on your Nord Stage 4. Now, if you don't have a Stage 3, yikes, you did throw out the cookbook and you burned all the ships at the shore. You're committed. You're sitting there with a Stage 4 and you've got nothing to go by except a fading memory of what it used to sound like or what it used to be. Then it's like you bought a Stage 4 and you never had a Stage 3 because you really are going to be starting from scratch. But like I said, if you do have the programs and preserve those bundles from your setup, even from a backup, there are people online at the Nord user forum. There's likely people on some of these Facebook user groups that might raise their hand and say, hey, you need something converted. I happen to have a Stage 3 and a Stage 4. Now, I'm not going to say they're going to do it for free because there's work involved, but it might give you some glimmer of hope if you simply don't have the time, don't have the expertise, or don't have the ambition to do these conversions yourself. Chances are, if you have done an elaborate Stage 3 conversion, you are the type, you are a self-starter, you are a self-made person, and you're going to go ahead and learn the Stage 4 from beginning to end, and you're just going to recreate that process again. And perhaps you enjoyed that process. I know I will personally enjoy that process, but I know that I'm not like everyone else where maybe this is what I do, okay? This is what I do. This is what I do for the channel. I sort of geek out on this stuff. So for me, it's not a huge deal, but I can imagine for a working professional musician who has zero time and you barely know the keyboard, you know how to turn it on and make a few things, but you don't want to learn synthesis, you don't want to learn the synth engine, and you don't want to spend time migrating a bunch of samples, then maybe reaching out to the community to see if anyone can lend a hand, whether it be free or paid, is your solution for that. Now, if you are going to go the synth route or consider, even if you have the Nord file viewer and it shows you, okay, well, the envelope was set this way and the filters were set that way and the effects were set this way, you still have to learn the synth engine on the Nord Stage 4 in order to make those assimilations between what the Stage 3 can produce versus what the Stage 4 can produce. In most cases, you can get to the promised land, but it might be going a slightly different avenue to get there. If you haven't already checked out a video where I compare the Nord Stage 3 and Stage 4 super saw wave, I talk about all the different tweaking you need to do to make the Stage 4 sound like the Stage 3. And for some of you, that might be kind of a big shock because you think, well, the keyboard's from Nord, how hard can it be? But there's a lot of apples and oranges happening, and that can be a good thing because they're moving forward. They're presenting new tools and techniques and features that we didn't have before, while at the same time trying to replicate what you had means you kind of have to start from scratch in many ways. The good news is that if you go through this process, you will know a lot about the synth engine, and you'll have a lot of stored knowledge in your head to just make you a better programmer, a better musician, a better Nord expert, if you will. So that's consideration number one. If you're still with me, give yourself a pat on the back because this means a lot to you and this is something that's been on your mind. Perhaps you already knew all of this, and I'm not saying anything that doesn't surprise you, but sometimes it's nice just to hear that you're not the only one with these worries and concerns. Consideration number two is the fact that there is no song mode set list capability on the Nord Stage 4. And this one people have been talking about. It's everywhere. And could Clavia/Nord make a song mode? Maybe they could. It's a matter of programming it, and it's a matter of giving the right amount of buttons and settings to do that. So whenever Nord has released a feature that required new buttons, they have done that in the past. An example is the Nord Piano 5. The Nord Piano 5 originally didn't have portamento glide, and it didn't have, there was one other feature that the Piano 5 introduced later. And they literally created a new version of the Piano 5 that had a knob and a couple more buttons to support the new features like glide. So it's possible they have it within their ability. Whether they want to do that or not, or whether it's feasible, whether it be financially feasible or logistically feasible, that is really a question for them. And that's a question that I can personally say that I will likely never get the answer to. I'm not at that level of integration with the Nord factory. In fact, I really have no direct ties to anybody with influence. But I kind of keep it that way on purpose because now I can do videos like this and I can be critical where we need to be critical or helpful where we need to be helpful. So no song mode set list. Now for some of you, you're like, oh, please. I'm sick and tired of hearing about that feature. I've never used song mode in the first place. It wasn't all that great. Who cares? Now, you might be in the minority because a lot of people do use song mode and a lot of people do rely on it as an essential part of their setup. And the reason for that is song mode is more than just a list of songs, a separated list of songs. It is that first and foremost, a separate list of songs, and those songs or those settings point to an existing program. But the thing that song mode the real powerful thing about song mode is the fact that it has song parts, which means that I can bring up a song and then I get 5 more choices. This is on the Nord Stage 3. I get 5 more choices for the part that I want to use for that. So if I want my verses on part 1, boom, I push part 1. And what the Nord Stage 3 will do is it will change the program to the perfect program for part 1 of that song, which could be verses. Then when I come to the chorus, I can push part 2. And now I've got a whole new program loaded up, which happens to be perfect for the chorus of that song. And then I can click part 3, and that might be a whole nother program, which happens to be perfect for the bridge of that song. And then maybe song part 4, which happens to be string pads on the left and a wild lead for my keyboard solo on the right. And that's a whole nother program, song part 4. All of that is contained in one nice, neat little collection called a song. And that song can be brought up, song 1, song 2, song 3, song 4. Each song has up to 5 song parts. So that's the kind of integration that a lot of people have done. And that's what we don't have any real hope for on the Nord Stage 4 currently. Now, if you're in that situation, and this is a huge deal, unfortunately, there is no easy answer, and you can go ahead and paint a target on my chest, and you can shoot the messenger a third time here, because yes, we ran out of T-bones on that. What do we do? Here, what are the workarounds? The only workaround that I can think of, the only few workarounds that I can think of is to use the standard program list. And I mean, the one that's built into all the Nord keyboards, the standard program list. The tiny bright glimmer of hope is the fact that we have more capability for programs. I think we have 512 programs now compared to 400 on the Stage 3. So we do get over 100 more slots, locations that we can store stuff. That's somewhat good news, so at least we have room to breathe. And if you wanted to, it wouldn't be hard to immediately go right now to your Nord Stage 4, load up the Sound Manager, and literally drag all of those programs down from their original location and make 100 new slots so that the first part of the list is opened and available. And remember, to do that, you'll have to click the Organize button, and you might even have to do, groups of these at a time. I actually haven't tried that, but in theory, it should be possible. So you'll make the first, let's say, 100 slots available for your own program song lists. And then at that point, I have a technique on the Electro 6, which basically says song 1 is in program 1, and song part 1 is in program 1, song part 2 is in program 2, and song part 3 is in program 3. Then program 4 will be the beginning of song 2, and then however many song parts it needs would be program 4, 5, 6, 7, and so forth. So in other words, you use your program list as your song/song part list selector. At that point, you can alphabetize them, you can put them in set list order, or whatever you need to do. Is it as pretty elegant and easy as what song mode was originally? No, it isn't. Is it the only way to do it that I can think of on the keyboard itself? Yes. The other option you have is to use an outside app. And what do I mean by that? Grab an iPad, a tablet, a computer, Windows, Mac, laptop, and use an outside app to manage your set list. Now, if this is something you were flirting with anyway, you are actually considering taking your whole set list up a notch by using a computer to help you organize it and orchestrate it, well, then this is a good reason now to finally take that plunge and make it happen. I do have a couple of videos online that talk about this. One is for Fourscore, and I think I do have somewhere an on-song video, but that might be for Patreon only. I'll have to see. But this is something I could explore here on the channel if you want to take the plunge. Another good thing to use is something like Apple's MainStage. If you have a Macintosh, you can invest in MainStage. It's not a super expensive app, but it does set list and song management like this, along with other things like supplemental sounds. So if you were actually flirting with the idea of, well, I'd like to use a computer for certain VST sounds, like if you want authentic solo trumpets or authentic solo flutes or something that where the stage 3 maybe doesn't do, or the stage 4 doesn't do out of the box, this might, again, be your excuse to say, okay, I'm finally going to take the plunge. I'm going to get a computer. I'm going to incorporate that in my rig, and it's going to be my set list and song manager. It's also going to be my supplemental sound creator, sound generator, and I'm going to take my entire rig up a notch. Yes, I'm going to have to get a computer. Yes, I'm going to have to learn how to use the computer. Yes, I'm going to have to buy an application. Yes, I'm going to have to learn that application. Yes, I'm going to have to spend hours and hours figuring it all out, connecting it all, and setting up my rig. But, this is something that keyboard players have been doing since there have been keyboard players. Programming a keyboard is part of being a keyboard player. It's just the sad truth. I mean, 9 times out of 10, it's part of the deal. You just can't escape it. So if you are already in your mind thinking, okay, this is just what I have to do, then here's a good time to do it. Because there's no song mode, so we're burning the ships at the shore. We're out of T-bones, and we're moving in to the next way of doing this. And then, of course, song parts. And for that, all I can suggest is using multiple programs. So obviously, a song part on the stage 3 was, in fact, a separate program for each part. So you could do that same thing, and I already mentioned it here a little bit, on the Nord Stage 4. You could take advantage of Scenes. Scenes does bridge some of that gap with the whole part issue. The one thing to know about Scenes is that you're not getting a separate program side by side. Scene 1 and Scene 2 aren't separate programs. It's the same exact program, and it's the exact same sounds. In other words, once you set up your piano, your layer A piano for Scene 1, if I go to Scene 2, that layer A piano is identical. It's the same exact piano. The choice is I can turn it off or turn it on. So a scene is not so much separating distinct sounds, but separating whether a sound engine or a sound layer is on or off. That's really the big thing that Scenes does. So you do have all these sound engines to choose from, 2 organs, 2 pianos, 3 synths. So Scene 1 could be you're using the piano from A, you're using the organ from A, and you're using synth A. And then Scene 2, you could be using piano from B, organ from B, and synth B and C. So that's a really important thing to understand about Scenes. It's not a fix-all. It's really just another subtle way of turning things on and off with a click of a single button rather than trying to run around and turn engines on and off quickly like that. Then there's the presets. You have presets for organ, presets for synth, and presets for piano. So technically speaking, if you are in the middle of a song and you are on a program and you're working away, you could say that, okay, in the verses, I use this piano, but in the chorus, I use a different piano or a different synth setup. You could technically switch your preset right there on the fly. Is it elegant? Is it easy? Is it going to be appropriate for all situations? No, but it is another separate way to organize things on the Stage 4, which we never had really on the Stage 3 other than the one synth preset. So if you like that concept and you were using synth presets heavy on the Stage 3, then this is actually better with the Stage 4 because you get presets for organ and piano as well. And again, the preset speaks to that camp of musicians that really never really program their keyboard beyond the 5 or 6 sounds that they need. Then you're really going to like presets because those are the top, consider them your favorite type setups for either the organ, piano, or synth. And then here again, the same solution for song parts is using an outside app. All right, so there it is. That's everything that I can think of as of this recording on the considerations for upgrading a Stage 3 to a Stage 4. Now, I didn't talk a bit about the feature differences or how the sounds are different or how the effects are implemented. All of that is already being done on YouTube for the most part, or I may actually go ahead and do several videos on that as well. I'm sure I might be able to say a few things that aren't already covered. But this video is specific to, hey, I'm entrenched in a Stage 3, and what do I need to consider? What do I need to really be aware of in order to upgrade to a Stage 4? So I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you enjoyed the conversation, the one-way conversation. Let's make it a two-way conversation by leaving a comment. If you have additional ideas, okay, feel free to share them because, look, this is just my perspective, but there are many perspectives on this, and feel free to leave a comment, and we'll go back and forth on that for a bit and start a whole thing. I'm hoping that samples will eventually convert. If you were really on the fence, you wanted to learn the sample editor, you wanted to learn the synth, you want to learn an outside app, this is finally your reason to say, hey, look, I'm going to do it. I'm just going to dig in and do it. I'm going to, and on the other end of that, I've showed you the storm. Now let me tell you about the rainbow. When you have those skills, when you have the ability to make your own samples, when you have the ability to understand and master the synth, and when you have the ability to work with an outside program to manage your set lists, there's an enlightenment that happens to you. You feel better about your situation. You feel like you've just brought your skills up a notch as a musician. And I'm not talking about learning a great solo. I'm talking about learning how to program your keyboard. And as we've already discussed, programming a keyboard for a keyboard player is almost as important as being able to play the keyboards because it really is part of the deal. How does that person sound? What kind of sound am I listening to? How are they presenting their setup? Or how quickly can they go from A to B in a live situation? Those are really important things. And I can tell you, there's been so many gigs that I've been on where I'm just fiddling and fumbling with a sound because I didn't learn my rig or I wasn't prepared for a gig. And half the song has gone by and I'm still sitting there figuring out why is this cable not working? What happened here? Where did my sound go? And unfortunately, as a keyboard player, that is part of the deal. Or fortunately, you might look at this as a positive thing. All right, thanks for joining me on this video. Really appreciate you visiting this. This has been a fun one to do. I had to explore it myself and kind of get to the bottom of my emotions on all this because now I've created hundreds of sounds for the Stage 3, hundreds. And if I want to do any of those sounds again, I basically have to start over from scratch. Isn't that fun? So, but I'm sure I'll enjoy it. I'm sure I won't do all of them, but I'm sure I'll enjoy it. But then I'll make a few new ones along the way, and it'll just be a fun journey to take it with you guys and to help you. I really enjoy that. It's been fun doing all this. Thanks. Talk to you soon.